Okay, so now we're going to watch Juliana Magalhães' testimony in the court of law in the case of Virginia against the state of Virginia against Brendan Banfield, the actual murder of Christina Banfield and Joseph Ryan took place in the year 2022. And then she's the co-defendant, and she's actually been in jail for the past almost 2 years, and so has Brandon Banfield. So it's really interesting that the defense attorney and the prosecution already told the jury that these people have been in jail, yet they're wearing civilian clothing. So it's usually done so that people on the jury are not predisposed to any kind of prejudice, because when you know that somebody is already in jail, you probably would already assume that they're guilty. So that's the reason why civilian clothing is provided during a trial. So it's very interesting that though the jury knows that, and it was clearly stated during the opening comments by the prosecution and the defense, why on earth are they still wearing these clothes? So anyway, that sort of occurred to me as I was looking at especially Juliana Magalhães, because if you've seen any pictures of her, she looked like a Brazilian bombshell. Her bosom was constantly on display. She apparently had long blonde hair at one point. Um, and of course, I mean, the hair part is understandable because you don't get, any way to make your hair blonde in the jail. So, of course, her hair's gone back to being a brunette. She's wearing oversized glasses, which let's hope that she actually uses those glasses and this is not just to make her look serious, the teacher slash librarian kind of look. And she's covered up, which is the right thing to do in the court system anyway. So yeah, I mean, of course she's going to look different, right? So anyway, before she starts with her testimony, let's keep a few things in mind. Number one, this woman is, it's not like she's here because of her civic duty. She has cut a cooperating arrangement with the prosecution. Um, so she's definitely coming here because of incentive. And that kind of skepticism has already been put into the minds of the jury by the defense attorney, as is his job. And then the defense attorney needs to hammer a point home, which is the co-defendant's narrative is legally weak unless there is physical evidence which the prosecution can provide, unless there is digital records or any other third party testimony which can basically independently confirm whatever Juliana Margulies is saying is the actual truth. So only her narrative should not be taken as, God's word. It should be taken with a pinch of salt. Also, the prosecution's theory assumes that there was perfect planning, and no planning is always neat. So the timelines that she's going to give us is going to be really important. Um, if her story overlaps with all the digital records and everything, if we do get to know how the actual day of the murder went, and that can be corroborated by 911 and everything else, yeah, then it should be more or less digestible for the jury. But in the absence of those things, it's only her version of the narrative. It doesn't mean that it's the actual truth. um, Sometimes, as we know, snitches don't always just tell stories, they can even shape an entire narrative. And it's really important. Let's see what the cross examination is going to be like. And we'll also have to keep in mind the things that she doesn't remember, right? So um, she is what we would call an unreliable narrative, if narrator. If one was looking at literary theory, that's exactly what we would be calling her. And the law doesn't always ask, is her story possible? We should always ask, can can her story be proven beyond a reasonable doubt? So now that we have these things in mind, let's watch what she says.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state?
So before she starts testifying, just one more time, I said this a few minutes ago as well, but we have to remember when we listen to her that she has the strongest motives to shape facts, to minimize her own role, and to maximize Brandon's role. And she will make herself sound coerced and afraid. And owing to her look, probably the jury is going to fall for that. So let's see. I mean, I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate. Not that I believe that anything that she is going to say is going to be absolutely false or absolutely true. I think none of us know. And let's see this, and let's go ahead and do that.
It was October
Do you know what year?
2021.
Okay. And when you first met Mr. Banfield, what was your relationship to him?
It's professional. It was my boss.
And you said he was your boss.
Yeah.
What was your job?
I was their au pair.
And what? So you said you worked as an au pair. What does that mean?
Au pair is like a nanny position, but somebody comes from another country providing care for their kids.
Okay, so in the previous video that I'd released about the opening statements, I did say that the au pair visa in America is a very specific kind of visa. It falls under cultural exchange. People who come under the au pair visa are hand selected. They're constantly under surveillance. It's not like they can just sort of sneak into the country and then just go anywhere. It's families vouch for those people. They're matched. They actually extensively communicate with the families they go into. They're not like housekeepers. They're there to enrich your child's life, but it's not like you will ask them to feed your child or wash your clothes. It's not that kind of work, and they don't actually get paid a lot. It's hardly $100 to $200 that they get paid, and that's because it's boarding and lodging is given, food is provided. On top of it, as au pairs, people usually end up attending community college or other enriching things because it falls under the cultural visa category. Okay, anyway, I mentioned that because she is talking about her visa status and her nanny status, or sorry, her au pair status.
And in exchange, they live with their family. And yeah.
Okay. Do you get paid to be an au pair?
Yes.
How much?
$200 a week.
And how long of a stay did you have as an au pair?
We can have from a year to 2 years. But as an au pair, I stayed for a year.
Okay. And did you? So you arrived. You said you arrived in October of 2021. And you said you stayed for a year.
Yeah.
And then did you extend that stay?
Yes.
And how long did you extend the stay for?
I think I might have extended for another year.
Let's talk about when you lived with the Banfield family and worked with them as their au pair. Where did you live?
I lived in their house, in their home.
Okay. And who lived there with you?
It was Brendan, his wife Christine, and their daughter.
And you know who Brendan is?
Yeah.
Who's Christine?
Christine was Brendan's wife.
And you said their daughter?
Yeah.
What was their daughter's name?
Valerie.
What was your life like with them?
With the family.
Yeah, when you first got there, what was it like?
It was kind of a period for me to adapt to the family, to my job, to the country. But I was very welcome, I guess.
And what was Brendan like when you first came to live with the family and be their au pair?
We barely spoke. Like, my relationship was mostly with Christine and Valerie. Brendan and I barely spoke at all.
Okay. What was Christine like?
Christine was very friendly, very welcoming, very fair.
Oh, that's an interesting word to use for someone, that she was very fair. Yeah, well, I just thought that's an interesting word to use for someone.
Yeah.
Did you spend time with her and spend time with Valerie together?
Yes.
And did you spend time on your own with Christine?
Maybe a couple times going to a store or, yeah.
Do you recall if Christine had a blood disorder?
I heard about it, yes.
And do you know the name of it?
I do not know.
Do you know?
Now, it's really important that the blood disorder has been brought up by the prosecution. It's because if a nurse like Christine already knew that she had a blood disorder, and of course she did, she had to be extra careful not to hurt herself, so that any kind of injury or small bruises might lead to a lot of bloodshed when it comes to a disorder that Christine had. So the fact that the narrative built by Brandon and by Juliana Magalhães, at least that's the narrative before she walked into the court, was that Christine had recruited someone to sexually harm her, and she had requested that that man bring a knife and other things with which he could harm her and she would bleed extensively. I mean, that's out of the question that anybody like Christine would ever do that. So the fact that this farce that has been spun, that this is a really important point. That's why the prosecution is bringing it forward.
She took any medication for it?
As far as I know, no.
What was Valerie like?
Valerie is very loving, very caring. She just,
How old was Valerie when you met her in 2021?
she was 3.5, I guess.
I'm sorry, sir.
She did get emotional there. I don't think that was just pretense, because they say when it's a real emotion, it lingers for a while, and not only does her voice waver, she can't talk for the next few seconds properly. So in that sense, they say this kind of emotion is real emotion. So let's take it for that, or maybe all of us think that she's pretending.
3.5?
And were there any other children that were living in the Banfields home while you lived there too?
No.
Do you know if they had an au pair before you were their au pair?
Yeah.
Who was that?
It was Amanda.
And when you began working for the Banfields, you need a minute? When you began working for the Banfields, do you remember what their jobs were?
Yeah.
Do you know what their jobs were?
Yeah. Christina was RN, and Brenda was working, I guess, as an investigator for the IRS.
At some point, while you were working for the Banfield family, did your relationship with the defendant change?
Yes.
How did it change?
It became sexual, physical relationship.
And do you recall when the relationship changed?
It was August 2022.
And did you keep the relationship, this new relationship with the defendant, did you keep this a secret?
For my part, some of my friends, they knew because I told them, and I used to post on my Instagram. But for his part, yeah, it was a secret.
Okay. And you said you told some friends about it.
Yeah.
Do you remember which friends you told?
Now that's really interesting, because if you're employing someone who lives in your house, you would probably be following them on Instagram, and especially Juliana was just 21 or 22 years old when she came into their family. So in that sense, probably Christina knew. I mean, unless, this will tell you how little I know about technology, and I don't even have an Instagram. I wonder if you can block someone from seeing your Instagram. I'm sure you can. God, I sound like a millennial.
I told Beatrice about it and Pamela.
And did you take any photos of you and the defendant after you began a romantic or physical relationship?
Yes.
And you said you had posted some things to social media?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to show you a couple of photos.
Now, the reason why these photos are being shown to the jury is just to establish that, that there was a real relationship there, and when she says that she did not hide her relationship, they're going to show that through the photos, and that's tangible evidence, not just her word. So every single time corroborating evidence is provided so that the jury knows that they can trust her. So when she does say something for which there is not hard evidence, then because they'll be trusting her through the process, if one or two things cannot always be corroborated with physical tangible evidence, they will still believe her.
Can you tell us who's under the emoji here?
It's Brendan.
And then a couple of these have noise.
By the way, the jury can see it, but it's not being shown on camera for the world to feast their eyes. It's because I think most of those photos that they're showing, has
And then this one, Commonwealth
Juliana
53,
scantily clad,
can you describe who
and
this
I
is?
think in some of
Brendan's
them they
son.
were even in
And
the
whose son is that?
bathtub.
My life.
So
And the date on the photo that is posted, is that the date that the photo was taken?
Yes.
And this photo here, Commonwealth 54, who's under the emoji?
It's Brendan.
Do you know when this photo was taken
It's from the same day as the previous picture.
as the previous one? All right, I want to go back to 52.
So her credibility as a cooperating witness will always be under attack, and that's why they constantly need to show, other pieces of evidence. And now they're, I think, showing a couple of
And
things from her Instagram
in that-
reels,
in
and
that
that's why
post,
we could hear that
Who is
music.
present in that post?
His person behind the emoji.
And who is behind the emoji?
Brendan.
And is it you and Brendan singing in that post?
Yes.
So you began a sexual relationship with the defendant in August of 2022 when you were how old?
I was 21.
And when this relationship began, did you ever think about how it might end?
No, I didn't really think it was a serious relationship.
And did the defendant ever talk with you about any long-term plans for the two of you?
Not initially.
Not initially. Did he ever though?
Yes.
When did that talk start?
I think he started after he talked about his plan.
Okay. And did he ever talk about the two of you getting married or the two of you having children?
Yes.
And do you recall when that talk began?
Also, after he mentioned his plan.
Did he ever talk about his relationship with his wife, Christine Banfield?
Sometimes it would come up in our conversation and he would talk about it.
And what did he say?
All right, so this is really important because in October 2022, according to Juliana's testimony, what we have is she is now going to give us a timeline that will pin down how Christine's murder came about, how the entire planning took place. It took place over months, and that's the premeditated part that the jury needs to know about, that this was a long thought through process. And basically the locations, when the gun was bought, when she went to the gun range, when the soundproofing of the windows took place, every single thing that she's saying as her word, there's a pattern to making sure that that credibility becomes golden and it becomes crystallized in the minds of the jury. And that's why everything that she says, that's why the prosecutor will of course keep providing these little clips or testimony and paper evidence, paper trail.
He used to say that she didn't seem to care about where he was, what he was doing. She didn't seem to care about him at all, and that she was helpless and just lazy.
Do you recall when he said those things?
When?
Yes.
Well, many times during our conversation when she came up.
And did he ever talk to you about anything else about his relationship?
Now, isn't that interesting that this narcissistic man, who obviously was able to get somebody like Christine, who was, by the way, they've been together since they were in college. So because he was able to get her that early in life, he probably never had to hanker after another woman, never sort of run after another woman. And they ended up marrying each other. So now, of course, he's bad mouthing her to the au pair and sort of saying these things. And can a nurse really be lazy with a job like that when you're working 12-hour shifts, sometimes even 24-hour shifts? Calling a woman like that lazy is basically the kettle calling the pot black.
Did he ever talk about getting a divorce with her?
No, he basically said divorce was not an option.
Did he say why?
Money was involved.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Money.
Okay. Anything else?
Money was involved and Valerie's custody too.
And what about those things? Did he say anything specifically about money or Valerie's custody?
Yeah, he said that he didn't want to have to share Valerie with Christine, that she wasn't good for Valerie, so he wanted to have Valerie full time. And money, plus she would have more money than he would if they ever split.
And so he didn't want to get divorced. Did he tell you what he wanted to do?
Yes.
What did he say?
He mentioned his plan to get rid of her.
So divorce wasn't an option because of the money that was involved, and he wanted custody of his daughter. Okay, of course. So she describes that divorce was not an option. Well, do we have any proof of that, or is it just her story that's going to work? Also, notice that she's sort of narrating his internal thoughts, okay, which can be, at least for some jurors, can be really hard to digest, because how would you know exactly what's going on in his head? Some people might ask. So were these actual statements that Brandon gave, or was this Juliana's inference, that's what was going on in his mind? And of course, Brandon is going to portray her as the jealous one, and she's portraying him as the one who had an ulterior motive to get rid of his wife. So I'm sure these kind of thoughts are going on in the minds of the jury.
And you said he mentioned his plan to get rid of her.
Yeah.
When did he talk about that first?
I would say it was in October 2022.
And what specifically was his plan to get rid of her?
Initially, he didn't really know what he would do. He just mentioned that he was thinking about it, and he would think better and let me know when he thought about it. Yeah.
Where were the two of you when this first conversation took place?
New York.
And were you on a trip to New York with only him?
It was him and Valerie.
What did you think when he told you that?
At first, I thought he was joking. Yeah, for me, it was a joke.
And you said that you were in New York when that conversation happened.
Yeah.
Did the three of you return to Virginia after that trip?
Yes, we did.
And did he talk about this plan again after you returned?
Yeah.
And did he give you more information or more detail about what he intended to have happen?
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to hire anybody because that is something that throughout investigation can be discovered easily. And that he had heard of a website called FetLife. He's never done anything on the website, but he heard about it, and that's what he...
I'm sure this has already, come into the minds of the jurors that there is this woman who heard that entire idea. If it was Brandon's idea, she heard the whole thing and then continued being in a relationship with him and continued participating in that. So some people must be thinking that, right? And there might be others who might be a little bit more sympathetic and might think that, if a woman from a foreign country who's earning only $200 and living in someone else's house, and then the boss is making, these kind of suggestions, and she's in a physical relationship with him, but then all this is sort of dicey, and of course doesn't bode well for her character.
was going to do.
And did he tell you anything more about the plan at this point?
At that point, not really. He was still thinking about it.
And at the end of October of 2022, did you visit a shooting range?
Yes.
And did anyone come with you?
Brendan.
The first time that you went to the shooting range, do you recall signing any paperwork?
Yes.
Judge, at this point, I'm going to display a photograph. I would ask for the display to be to the witness and counsel only. Yes, ma'am.
So she goes to the gun
When's the
range
latest screen
twice.
time you
It
have?
seems she
Is there a
went
document on your
into the
screen?
gun range in
Yes.
October and also in
and
December. And then
I'm
Christine was, of
scroll
course,
through the
killed in
document for you
February.
slowly.
Just for the record, could you the exhibit number of the
Oh,
document?
it is exhibit number 56.
Thank you.
Now, this is where the state is trying to turn this ordinary conduct of going to a gun range in America, which is
Do you
an
recognize
ordinary
this
thing.
exhibit?
People do that
Yes.
all the time. But
And how
it
do you
had a
recognize it?
sinister
It's the
intention
way
when
where
it
you
comes to
sign
these
when
two.
first go to the shooting range.
And did you sign this?
Yeah.
Is that your signature?
The prosecutor is, of course,
Yes.
now showing pictures
Judge, at
to
this
show
point, I'm
that they
gonna ask you
actually
to
went to the gun
Commonwealth
range.
56 and allow for it
So,
to be published to the
they're
jury.
showing her seeds
All
of
right, receipts and
credibility
evidence and published.
with corroborating
Back up
evidence.
to the top so everybody can see it.
And of course,
you recall
remember,
being on the
going
board?
to the gun range in America is not
October
illegal.
29,
That's why the
2022.
prosecution needs to
And on
describe
that date,
why.
do you recall seeing a firearm?
I don't
Do you
think
see a photograph on
she's
your screen?
shaking out of
I do.
fear or anything, but
And
she's
do you
definitely
recognize this
shaking her
photograph?
leg.
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
When
me,
one
Juliana.
is under
And do
so
you
much
have a picture?
pressure, she knows that her freedom lies in her hands, and her freedom depends on her performance on the stand. So of course, when all anybody is under that much pressure, of course she's going to be moving her body around, and as you can see, a lot of tension is in her lips, so she's constantly chewing on her lips, she's constantly taking her tongue out. Again, I'm not a body language expert or a body behavior expert, but I think all of us can see these kind of tells that she's nervous, she's really anxious, and that's why all that energy needs to come out in some way, and that's why she's constantly moving around as she's talking.
At this point, I am going to ask to have this admitted as Commonwealth 57.
All right, any objection to 57? All right, 57 evidence and published.
Did the defendant tell you why he wanted to return to the firing range for that second visit?
Yes,
And why was that?
just in case I need to use it if something goes wrong.
And what would go wrong? What was he concerned about going wrong? Had he told you more of his plan at this point?
At that point specifically, I can't really recall.
But he told you that he wanted you at the firing range because you needed, in case something went wrong.
Yes.
Is that right?
Now that's really interesting. Something going wrong is if their plan goes sideways. That's a sinister thing, that he's even thinking of these things just in case something goes wrong. Even she knows she needs to know how to use a gun, which she eventually did use. So he has her, wrapped around in this plan really deeply. It's not just him doing everything. So he's made sure that she's equally culpable. If he has shot someone, so has she. And I think that must be in the minds of the jury as well, that she's not sitting here with clean hands at all.
Yes.
After the December visit to the
Such a sinister thing to do. Even the plan that he came up with was so circuitous, where he's using Christina's name from her laptop to make an account as a fake account by the name of Anastasia Knight. And he uses the picture that as a wife she's sharing with him, in which she's wearing a new swimsuit. And you would send that kind of picture to your husband, of course. And they use that picture for such a sinister purpose, in which in this fetish account she basically says that she wants to be sexually assaulted, and it's terrible what they've done to this woman.
that email address.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you recall what device he used to create the email address?
To my laptop.
By the way, what kind of forensic proof is the prosecution going to provide us, in which they can prove that it's not only her word? They will be, I'm sure, to the jurors they would provide saved passwords. They would provide Wi-Fi router logs. I'm sure they did provide evidence to show that Christine's laptop is being used, but she's busy doing other things, and she's not the one who's using the laptop to make this account. Because if she's simultaneously on two devices, that's not always, like, you would be less active on one device. So I wonder how they're going to sell this part to the jury, because you could technically be on two devices at the same time. So is this kind of evidence, can this be verified, or will this just be a narrative?
And then
It's really interesting that every time they use Christina's devices to chat with people on this fetish website, they always make sure that she's home. And that's the kind of strategy that somebody who's relatively familiar with police tactics, or someone who's really into true crime would know, or somebody who's meticulously, planning a murder would know. So it's really interesting that, I hope these are not left as loose ends by the prosecution. I hope they will be able to show forensically through digital data device that, data that this is indeed such a meticulous plan.
Commonwealth 61 here. Is this the group, for lack of a better word, that this profile was posted in?
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat that again, please?
Sure. This photograph here, Commonwealth 61. Is this the group within FetLife that you use to communicate with other users?
Yes.
And then Commonwealth 62. Is this the post that you and Brendan used on FetLife?
Is there an objection? What's your objection, Mr. Leading? Okay.
Okay, understood. All right.
I'll sustain the objection.
Take a look at, okay.
Now, just a second. A few seconds ago, did you see that Judge Penny asked, "What's the objection?" And then the defense attorney got up and said, "Well, the prosecution was leading the witness to say something." Now, what does that actually mean? When a leading objection is sustained, it matters because it signals that the prosecutor is basically feeding something to the witness to get a particular answer. And that's why the defense attorney got up and said, well, she's leading. None of the sides is supposed to ask leading questions to get a particular kind of answer. When you hear leading and the judges tell the lawyer to stop, that's basically stop putting words in their mouth, let them speak the way they would, because in the court of law we expect honesty out of people, and if the witness needs the question to contain the answer, that's not great for when it comes to the reliability as a witness, and especially in this case because it seems like most of the case is based around this woman's testimony. Yes, they're providing corroborating evidence, but it's mostly because this woman flipped, and that's why we have Brandon on trial. So even truthful witnesses, frankly, can sometimes be puppets, at the hands of the attorney. And that can be for several reasons. There could be very innocent reasons that someone's just really scared, so they don't know what to say at that point. They are truthful, but they're not making up anything. But there are times when your mind is just blank, and that can happen when you're on the stand. And as an attorney, you wouldn't want the person that you've put as a witness to go blank. So, at times you sort of lead people, but it's not supposed to happen. Anyway, that was a little bit of explanation.
We can terminate this view at this point. How did you and Brendan, how did you use the laptop? How did the two of you use her laptop without her knowing about it?
It was because every time she used to get home from work, she used to throw her backpack by the door, and in the backpack was her laptop and her work stuff.
And
They did this months on end. Oh my
once the
lord.
FetLife account was created,
Until they found
What
the
did
right
the two of you
person
do it?
who could be lured into
that's right.
the home, because it was such a weird plan that lots of people backed off. That's what the prosecutor said in her opening. And so it took them months to ensnare Joseph Ryan, to get him to a point where he basically trusted the person that he was speaking to, a woman by the name of Anastasia, who by the way doesn't exist because Brandon made her up, and Juliana made her up. So it took them months, and that kind of betrayal under the nose of the person that they basically killed, the woman of the house. It's ridiculous.
Other people, other guys, they would also text, looking for whatever it is that they're interested in.
okay. And had Brendan explained to you at this point in time, was there any explanation given to you about what it was that he was using FetLife for, or what it was he was looking for from another FetLife user?
Yeah.
What was
Well,
that?
the website is for BDSM, people that like that kind of stuff, and he said we would be able to find somebody that plays like aggressive or that likes playing with blood and that kind of stuff.
And why? What was what if any reason did he want to find someone like that for?
Well, because the person would be eventually the person would be invited to come to the house, and he needed to know that the person was willing, or he was going to do what he had in his mind.
And what was he using FetLife to ask other users to do to the Anastasia profile?
Things like pinning her down, gagging her, spanking. Yeah.
I mean, as far as alibis and goes, the phone location and everything goes, yes, they thought of a great plan, but just in the minds of the jury, as a nurse who's worked almost 24-hour shifts, will the jury actually believe? I mean, that's the account that they were trying to sell, right? That she would come home after 24-hour shifts rather than taking a nap or taking a bath or playing with her child, or eating some dinner. She would actually just get on these kind of websites and start to look for someone who's going to hurt her, knowing that she had a blood disorder. Ridiculous. It's just
And when the two of you used FetLife to message other people, were you, who would do the typing? Were you typing? Was Brendan typing?
I mean, anybody who has even a reasonable interest or even the lowest interest in true crime knows that the first person who's always looked at when a spouse or a girlfriend passes away is always the other significant half. And in this case, it's of course, we as humans around the world, just as lay people as well, we are all very skeptical of men whose wives end up getting murdered. So that's always the first step. So he knew that he would be investigated.
But why did he know?
What do you know?
Yeah, why? You said because he always knew about the investigation. What did he know about an investigation? There hasn't been one yet.
He knew eventually we would have one investigation.
Why?
It's really interesting. It just popped into my head that a few minutes ago she told the jury that she posted about her affairs on Instagram, which basically she wants to show that I think some jury members might be thinking that this matters because it speaks to her sort of impulsivity. She's this innocent young person. She's not thinking things through. She's willing to basically say, I put everything on Instagram. And then, although her affair is open, at least to her friends, many people knew about it apparently, according to her testimony. And then she basically wants to say that he's the one who's more calculating and he's keeping it under wraps. So she is painting him as, someone who's very, very calculating. And of course, went through months and months of planning before he executed this murder on the day of his birthday, by the way.
What did he know about an investigation? There hasn't been one yet.
He knew eventually we would have one investigation.
Why?
Because there would be murder, and it's just what happens. Investigation.
And did he tell you that?
Yeah.
What specifically did he tell you about that?
Well, he knew that we needed to have some alibis. He knew that he needed to change his routine 2 weeks prior, so you wouldn't be odd that he wasn't, just at McDonald's on that day specifically.
Okay. I'm going to show you a couple of items one at a time. The parties have stipulated to the admissibility of the next two items, the next several items. The first two are going to be Commonwealth 66 and 67.
Under seal. So in a courtroom, when something is under seal, that doesn't mean anything shady. It just means that the evidence is under seal. That means you and I, the public, cannot see it. However, the jury will be able to see it, the lawyers can see it, the judge can see it. And it's under seal doesn't basically mean shady. It's just to provide privacy from something that might be graphic or something that might be prejudicial. So basically, they're not hiding any kind of proof, is what I want you to know. Another thing is, the judge literally, I think the prosecutor just said something was stipulated to admissibility by both the sides, right? So when something is stipulated by both the sides, that means they're agreeing that the evidence is indeed authentic and hence admissible. They're not going to fight about it. They've basically understood that, it just needs to come in, so it will come in. The defense can still fight about it, though. The defense can say, yes, we did admit that. Those, let's say, some messages do exist, but that doesn't mean what the state is trying to make them. It just means something completely different. So both the sides can spin their narrative on the same piece of evidence. So that's another thing. Another thing that we can look at is stipulation can also be a defense strategy. It's not just a concession. And then sometimes defense wants evidence to come in so that they can argue what context it should be viewed in. The defense can also sometimes show that there's an alternate explanation for the same piece of evidence. So in that sense, I think fighting for admissibility is actually a really important part of any trial before the trial even begins, because for months, sometimes even years on end, the defense and the prosecution is basically trying to agree on the exhibits that they will be providing, which will be viewable by the jury. So it's a long process. It sometimes both the sides agree, most times they don't. So under seal often creates an imbalance between the jury and the public's reaction. The jury is reacting to the evidence that we cannot see, right? So sometimes that's why we as all of us as viewers of a particular case feel so passionately about things, because we have all this outside knowledge that hopefully the jury doesn't have, but sometimes they have the kind of knowledge that we don't have. So, case in point, the Casey Anthony trial, they didn't even know half of what the public knew, and then they just let her go, basically based on the very limited piece of evidence that the prosecution had put across. So in that sense, at times it looks unfair, but it's actually fair, at least in the eyes of the law. So the one thing that we should keep in mind is that the jury is deciding this case based on evidence, okay? Something that we cannot fully see. It's not a flaw in any kind of system. The system is designed in such a way, but it's good to basically remind people that the jury's reaction and their verdict should not be based on anything that's loosey-goosey. It should be concrete evidence that is given to them, and that's why these kind of stipulations are really important in the court of law.
Posting and messaging, and she would be home and he wouldn't be home, and other times I wouldn't be home, and so there would be no way to actually prove it, and that's the alibis Pete talked about.
Can you recall any specific instances of how it would have worked for one of you to be home posting while Christine was home and the other one was out of the home?
That normally happened when both of us went to the gym, and he would tell me to leave earlier and go home so I get home before him, and for me to log in the account and text people, talk to people, and other times he would tell me to hang in the gym behind, and he would leave earlier, so he would be the one logging in and talking to people.
Okay. And the gym that you're talking about, do you recall which gym that was?
Yeah, Lifetime.
And did the two of you, and do you know which location?
Yeah, Ruston.
Did the two of you go to Lifetime Fitness together frequently?
Yes.
Did Christine go with the two of you?
It was just maybe a couple times, but nothing. It wasn't really run at night.
Okay. I'm going to go back to Commonwealth 66 and 67 at this point. If we could see 66.
You can publish from the table, please.
Just give us a second. Jury, is it argument? In the count. Oh, see it down there. Okay. All right, so looking at Commonwealth 66, can you see it on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. And then at the top of your screen, there's a column that's titled User ID. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. The user ID identified as Anastasia 9.
Okay.
Who wrote the messages from Anastasia 9? Not that specific message, but just in general. Who is the person or persons who are writing the messages from Anastasia 9?
It's either me or Brendan.
And the other user IDs that we see that are largely numbers in this view, are those messages that are received by you and the defendant using the Anastasia 9 profile?
So now they're getting into granular details of the account itself, because that is a digital piece of evidence. Okay, frankly, that is where they're going to prove that whatever she's saying is the actual truth, because most of it as of now sounds like a narrative, like a story. So constantly, because their case hinges on this woman's testimony, they need to be constantly be basically giving these pieces of evidence so that the cooperator's testimony doesn't look like it's been purchased, okay? Because they need to show this kind of corroboration, and they need to show that there was motive, and it's not just a story. It actually shows the why of something that was done. So the prosecutor, she needs to show these things so that people actually believe it. Otherwise, the defense attorney is going to get up and basically use the same pieces of evidence and plant reasonable doubt into the minds of the jury.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for us to scroll forward a little bit to location number 367 or cell 367.
Of course, as an Indian, I find this endlessly fascinating that court cases are televised, number one. Number two, I also find it fascinating that if you compare the speed of the judicial system in the US, it has a exponential meteoric speed compared to the Indian judicial system, the legal system. It's notoriously backlogged. They say it will take about 100 plus years to clear the backlog of the Indian system. So, I just find this legal process so fascinating, and the fact that all of us can, be in different parts of the world and see all this and learn from all this, it is just mind blowing.
The user ID Taco Supreme 7000. Did you come to know who that was?
That's Joe.
And now if we could switch to Commonwealth 67.
So I skipped a few minutes, and I'm basically, fast forwarded. And this is the point of the testimony where she's basically saying that it's not like Joseph Ryan was the first guy, first person that they could, turn into their victim. They actually went through a series of people. So the prosecutor was corroborating several phone numbers that they had been communicating with over the fetish website. And she's basically saying that this was person number 4 or 5 who agreed to come over into the house to do this sort of kinky fetish style of BDSM, and then they really wanted to lure this person all the way in so that they could make sure that they were able to murder Christina as well, because that's the only way they could sort of kill two birds with one stone. This is important. She basically just agreed that over the phone, every time that they had spoken to Joe Ryan, and that was using the app called Telegram, she was the one who spoke to Joseph Ryan under the guise of Christina slash Anastasia. So she is equally culpable, and sure, that's coming into the minds of the jurors. She is not some innocent shrinking violet clutching her pearls in a corner. She is very much, very actively responsible for all this. So, yeah, wow, I'm sure all this is coming in their mind as they see this evidence which the prosecution is providing. So now on the screen we can actually see some evidence that even we can look at, because it's usually just between the judge, the jury, and the lawyers. So this is being, open to the gallery, as it were, and that's why all of us can see it. So this is not under seal in that sense.
Friday. Who chose February 20?
By the way, which is also an extremely fascinating thing about the American judicial system, that an American has the right to walk into any court in any state and go and witness a trial taking place. I think that's wonderful. Not something that we can all do in every single part of the world. So I think Americans should feel that they're very blessed that they can do that. As a matter of fact, I remember reading somewhere that Ketanji Brown, who is the Supreme Court Justice of America, that's how her interest began in law, because as a child she had at one point witnessed a court case. I wish all of us could do that. I wish we could walk into our courts, and just, see a trial as, lay people. Unfortunately, not something that we can do in most countries around the world. So, yes, Americans should feel really blessed about this.
For 2023 as the date.
Friend.
And did he?
The night he was expecting.
I'm not sure if everyone registered that. Did you hear what she said? According to her, looking at that particular knife and those zip ties and that chain, Brandon apparently commented on it and said the knife doesn't look pointy enough. And we should remember that Christina was stabbed several times. in a frenzied attack by Brandon, according to the prosecution, and according to the defense team, it was all done by Joseph Ryan, and he was the perpetrator. So those are the two narratives that are going on. Months of preparation, luring another person as a pawn just to be killed in his house. He also soundproofed the windows. He also changed phones so that that would be the phone on that day, and there would be no previous evidence of all the plotting that these guys have been doing. I mean, this man really thought things through, okay? That is game theory. And went to, he changed his routine, changed his phone. I mean, he's changing so many things. Why not just let this woman go, for heaven's sake? God. This is such degree of premeditation. It is astounding how much this man thought through his plan. If he had not been caught, probably, he might have gone on to other crimes, because this is such meticulous planning. Right, so here's what we need to do before we close this video, which is getting really long because her testimony is also quite long, which is we need to remember a few things. Number one, that this case can basically rise and fall with her testimony and Brandon's testimony, okay? The fact that she's been put on the trial, she's in the witness box, means he might actually come into the witness box as well, so that then it would be the battle of the testimony, as it were, right? So she is basically the linchpin. Secondly, just because she's been given incentive doesn't mean that she's out and out lying. There might be a few nuggets of things there which cannot be corroborated, but the prosecution is doing a great job of putting one paper after another, one text after another, just to make sure that the jury, because they already know that this is a despicable human being. I mean, she's killed someone, right? But at least they would know that whatever she's saying is not an out and out lie. Another thing that we need to know is her credibility needs to be analyzed at every step, okay? Digital cases, in these kind of cases, if the digital forensic evidence can independently confirm everything that she's saying in her timeline, that's really important, okay? So we need to remember that as well. And when evidence is stipulated under seal, the fight isn't about whether that exists or not. It's about how the jurors will interpret that, okay? Because the prosecution will spin it their way, the defense is going to spin it their way, okay? So this is something that we need to remember. Also, the motive evidence that she's telling us about, okay, helps explains the step-by-step behavior that took place in this particular case. However, it cannot be substitute for the proof of an action beyond a reasonable doubt, okay? Another thing that we need to remember is that the defense doesn't have to prove what happened. It's actually the state that has to prove every single step, and the defense can basically just sit there and not say anything at all. Of course, they're not going to do that, because the minute the defense does not say anything, that in itself in the minds of some jurors would be, oh, they're not saying anything because because they have nothing to say. But the burden lies on the state, not on the defense. We must remember that, okay? So those are the things that we need to keep in mind. The video is getting really long, so I'm going to stop here for today.